For as long as I can remember, I've loved stand-up comedy. The audience, the stage, the jokes. Oh sure, I like comedy in a general sense. Laughter, who doesn't like it? But I trace my love all the way back to this guy. Johnny Carson. Not to mention his comedian guests. They're tight five. Stand-up. You get it?
Western philosophers have been discussing humor since the Greeks. I confess my ignorance of other canons, but I was raised in the public education system of Illinois. So there's that. I invite you to post about other theories in the comments. So I will not include Native Americans or Africans or Eastern or Polynesian or even most Western thinkers, not because they don't exist, but because I got tired of reading. And over there too. But from where I am, there are three main theories of humor, or what makes something funny. There are others, and I can list them. And I will, potentially, but I am not a philosopher by training. I reserve the right to be irrational. So one more thing, I can't ignore this fact. I don't find certain items that are objectively comedy funny. And I say they're objectively comedy because they are performed for the purpose of eliciting laughter. I might find that laughter bad or perhaps immoral, and we'll get into that, promise. But it is comedy for that performer and for their audience. It's just unfunny to me. For example, I don't think laughing at imagined offense is funny at all. Oh, he went there. He triggered the libs. So-and-so destroys so-and-so. I imagine they all think my comedy sucks, and boy, is that feeling reciprocal. But they exist, and they fall into these categories. Better or for worse.
I lied a minute ago when I told you that my first stand-up love was Johnny Carson and his monologue. To be fair, he was the first human doing stand-up that I loved. In other words, my favorite Muppet is Fozzie Bear. He's the only Muppet I follow on Twitter. And now I'm a comedian, I think. I do have scheduled dates, so I guess that's true. And I'm a comedy writer. So it's kind of my job to know what makes something funny. Therefore, we're here to understand what's so funny. My question, what is funny? Much ink and not enough blood has been spilled in search of what is quote-unquote funny. Let's start with a summary. Incongruity theory, superiority theory, relief theory, corrective theory, humorous play. We'll learn about these. At least we'll try. And I will do my best to not just read the Wikipedia or Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy's entry on those subjects. I will partly summarize the theories because that's what this video is. This video is kind of a search for a theory of humor. Maybe it will supersede or integrate those I mentioned. Then, most importantly, how do we use that knowledge to be even more funny? Spoiler alert, I fail. But not for the reasons you think. I don't think understanding something ruins it. I know how lots of things work, and that doesn't make seeing a new one less interesting. I know how to write a headline for The Onion. That doesn't make them less funny. I know how to play guitar. Kind of. That doesn't make what animals as leaders do any less impressive. When I did my more regular news satire show, I had to come up with 5 to 10 minutes of new material every episode. And even though I still burnt out hard, I loved that 18 people a week watched my stupid face talk about the news. I really did. It was really nice. However, if I just waited for inspiration for jokes, nothing would come. I had to work at it. I had to figure out what a good late night joke was. I listened to interviews with writers and read books about the craft. I learned the patterns. Because when you have to write 100 jokes a day, there's going to be a formula and a ruthlessness about it. So how did I do it? I don't know. I never cracked the humor code, but I kept at it for a while. Now I'm taking a break of indeterminate length. I had been doing the show over a year, and I burned out. I had no one else to work with, no one to bounce ideas off of, just me and a screen and the likes and the comments that sometimes came. And thank you for those. Sincerely. So let's start with benign violation. Imagine, if you will, a card game. One that supposes to pit itself against all of mankind. No. Kanye West? No. Against humanity? The name isn't important. What benign violation is when you take two ideas and you push them together, and they have no business being next to one another. And that's what's funny. As long as it's not too weird. That's the benign. And what if it is too weird? I wouldn't know that. If I knew that, I wouldn't have made this essay. I'd write a book on how to be funny and sell that. This theory has been around, but the Humor Research Lab, or HURL, because vomit is hilarious, gave a visual way to represent it. The humble Venn diagram. Now everybody loves a Venn diagram. The Venn diagram of people and people who love Venn diagrams is a circle. Thank you, Dimitri Martin. So, imagine a Venn diagram of competence and Donald Trump, or competence and Joe Biden. Now realize that not only are both of those funny, the middle part of them all is hilarious. Or, to pick a less controversial topic, abortion. See, that was another benign violation, unless you view abortion as murder, which is silly. See here that the violation is when items come into conflict and the intersection is incongruous. Abortion, not really funny, irony notwithstanding, and a less controversial topic. To be less pointlessly political, how about a doorknob and a coat hanger? Kind of funny, not funny, maybe. Or a door and a mason jar. Neither of them are funny on their own, but if you smash them together, your door is ajar, which is a stupid joke that I should be fired for making. The boss of humor will take your thumbs up and change.gov petition.
Leopold!
Comedy came first to me.
Leopold!
I heard Weird Al before I heard the hits. I saw Spaceballs before Star Wars.
Spaceballs the flamethrower! That kids loved it.
I saw Hot Shots instead of Top Gun. I still haven't seen Top Gun. Weekend Update caused me to start reading the newspaper. And right-wingers in the opinion section of the New York Times are still hilarious. A love of comedy was one of the few things my father and I had in common. Matter of fact, one of the few things I have for my father is a bootleg copy of Andrew Dice Clay's The Day the Laughter Died. I can't even tell you when I last listened to it. Consider this a warning, though. Sometimes comedians are terrible people. Sometimes they win a Grammy anyway. Norm Macdonald had a joke. It went on for over 4 minutes before getting to the unexpected and inevitably perfect punchline. If it was told any different, nobody would remember it. Nobody would laugh as hard at it. The joke is a story. I know it's a joke. We all know it's a joke. A joke whose punchline will come. We know it goes on and on and on. You just want it to end, but you don't, because you don't know what the punchline is going to be. You want to see him walk the line between losing the thread of the story and keeping it. It's silly and fun and full of internal beats and sub-jokes, but we can't stand it as it keeps building. We keep watching it and hoping he'll land it and wondering where it'll be. And when he comes, you are relieved because it's perfect. There's no other way it could have ended. That's the relief theory of humor. The pressure is built and built and built and built and built and let off. Sometimes you'll hear comedians say they do this explicitly. It's what Hannah Gadsby says she's doing in her Nanette special. It's every rule of three joke. It's the aristocrat's joke. Because let's face it, if the aristocrats, that's not a benign violation. If you do it right, it's certainly not benign.
They all jump down into the shit and piss and cum, and they start fucking and sucking each other.
I'm not a neurologist, but I suspect this may relate to why sometimes people laugh after near misses with danger. I guess maybe the best way to see if this one's true is with a bone saw, an MRI, or both. If you want to be scientific. Late in 2021, Jimmy Carr released a new special with a Holocaust joke, where he joked that the Holocaust had its plus sides. The Holocaust killed people he didn't like. This kind of joke embodies our third theory, superiority theory. Or let's Americanize this a little bit. What's so funny about a man getting hit in the groin with a ball? It's hilarious, but it's not as funny when you see them as human, as equals. Here, they're robots, and stupid ones at that. We feel like we're better than the victim of the ball bopping. That wouldn't happen to us. Well, we're aware of our surroundings. We're fast enough. We're agile enough. We've internalized our balls of steel exercise tape. But that person...
Arrgh! My groin!
We're not a fool. We're good, superior, and we laugh.
It's got to be superiority theory. Dopamine rules. Or maybe it's relief that we're not getting hit in the nuts. Serotonin. So I guess maybe it's what ruins a joke. Maybe that'll help. If we see things with a superiority theory lens, if we have a large amount of empathy, that injury becomes tragic. A movie named Jackass Forever recently came out. At least when I started writing this, it's been a minute. Are we laughing at these people getting literally hit in the nuts because we believe that we're better than them? Maybe. But they more seem like, to me, like friends bringing us into the bit. They laugh, we're peers. It's like part of the love, right? Is it relief it's not us? And I suppose the actions are benign as they survive. So are these benign violations? But I'm not interested in slapstick specifically. I want to know about jokes. So let's try a person on stage saying a joke. Even if we laugh at Jimmy Carr, do we think that some people deserve to die in a Holocaust? Unlikely, unless we're terrible people. But part of the problem is that we can only presume Carr is joking. I mean, he probably is. He is a comedian after all. He's on stage, he's got a microphone, it's been released on one of those more premier streaming services. It's not some crank on YouTube. It's not like he's presenting an award at the Oscars. People who are not happy about Carr's joke are not missing the point. Most people who don't find the joke funny clearly do know why it's a joke. I'd submit that we're not too empathetic. If there's such a thing, it's that we have seen too many statements by actual people, some of whom are comedians, who mean it. We can't be sure if it is a joke. It's not that we're more sensitive. It's just that there's more bullshit out there. We must now devote our brain cycle or two to figuring out if he's fucking joking. And he is, I'm pretty sure. But is he? I mean, he's making fun of the Roma in his joke. He even calls them a slur. He chose that group, and that word amongst so many more. Can't make fun of the gays.
Hey, I'm breaking in here to say I apologize for my imprecise language here, but I think you understand what I'm getting at. Widely discriminated against people are more likely to have jokes made against them.
Minority who's still oppressed has to be the joke, because the other ones are funny to hateful people. There aren't any of those hateful people there, are there? And once he decides to use the Roma, he has to use the slur. Because most people don't know it's a slur. Use Roma and ignorant white people are likely to wonder why Hitler hated tomatoes. We have to think that through, which is why nobody has a problem with jokes against the Nazis. Nazis are clearly bad. Hitler was a mass-murdering fuckhead, as many historians have said. If somebody doesn't laugh at a Nazi joke, it's either a bad joke or they empathize with Nazis. And if they do empathize with Nazis, well, fuck them. So I guess we can look through this. I can dissect Carr's joke theory with every theory we've discussed. I mean, it's relief that he's not going to offend another group, seeing genocide as benign, as well as those other people that I don't know and they don't affect me, etc., etc., etc. And they all rely on the fact that Carr is not actually sympathetic to Nazis. That's important. A long time ago, in a previous life even, I went to college at Illinois State University. And for a short while, the uberkind of literature taught there, David Foster Wallace. He's since moved on to California in the somewhat appropriately named Pomo College, aka Pomona. This is not a David Foster Wallace biography. This is a joke that just amuses me. However, as a consequence of going to Illinois State when I did, I was in proximity to this fellow. He was frequently cited, referred to, recommended in reading lists, and generally revered. Deserved it? Don't know. I say this mostly as a method to try and introduce the bona fides of me, by proxy of me in proximity to someone who was called a wunderkind, even though I had approximately 0 interactions with the fellow. Beyond listening to him at a reading, yeah. One time he was supposed to meet me for pie and a friend, and he didn't, so whatever. So before we go further, yes, I liked Infinite Jest. No, I don't think you need to read it. So while I liked his fiction, what I preferred from Wallace was his nonfiction. In 1993, he published E Unibus Plurum, Television in the U.S. Fiction. My first exposure to this was in the collection of essays, A Supposedly Fun Thing I'll Never Do Again. In it, he discusses meta-narratives of television, and I must reiterate, underline, and possibly highlight in green that he is of his time. He is discussing the irreverence of the show Married with Children. Television does not hold the culture in the clutches it once did. We moved on. No longer are we clutching pearls at Morton Downey Jr. Wallace writes about the metastasis of watching, whatever that means. But now we're not just watching. We're participating. And by we, I mean humanity, even the bad parts. Wallace says, I'm going to argue that irony and ridicule are entertaining and effective, and that at the same time they are agents of great despair and stasis in U.S. culture. The problem, which Wallace couldn't have seen in 1993, is that there is no stasis now. All that's left is entertaining and effective despair. How far have we shifted? We need to know, is this performance? Are we laughing at laughing? Or are we laughing at despair? Or are we laughing at someone else? Of course, then he discusses the quote-unquote cutting-edge fiction, and it reminds me of more Family Guy and Ready Player One than cutting-edge fiction. 90s were a different time. With the sheer amount of things available, we have to take things at face value because otherwise we can't understand it. We know too much. This is probably why I can talk about trans women. On stage, I probably don't hate trans women. I just hate the one. Me. So large is our level of participation that the only reason that many people can take a joke as if it is beyond hyperbole or hyperbole or however you want to pronounce it. We don't have time to suss out motives. This is not to shame people, it's a fact. There are too much. There are literally billions of entertainments all around us, eager for eyeballs and ad revenue. It's not that Jimmy Carr wasn't joking. It's that we can't rely on that assumption anymore. We all unfriended that one guy that thinks Hitler had a point. Even if we take someone at the most charitable, it's not always great. Do we understand our former president was joking about sexual assault? That's if we believe it was a joke at all. Both reads on that situation are terrible. Is Carr's quote-unquote hate quote-unquote ironic? Really? I'm pretty sure. Like, if I had to say, I would guess it would be 97% sure. But remember, there's a lot of hateful shit being said on stage in the name of performance. That 3% certainly feels more powerful than it is. Kind of like a senator from Wyoming or something. We are too inundated by both performance and honest hatred cloaked in performance. And jokes are less funny the more we have to think instead of relying on the firing of synapses flooding our brains. And I think we can agree on that. We only have the emotional bandwidth to know which of so many goddamn people are kidding about genocide. We know there are way too many bigots and assholes in the world. Without the knowledge of the joke teller's morality, the joke may be lost. And how can we ever know another's morality? Further, how does this help us make jokes?
One popular thing people say about people taking offense is that you have to take it in context. Not long ago, noted bug and animal semen server Joe Rogan found himself in a little bit of trouble. He said the N-word. His supporters said that we didn't hear the context, even if we did. The context is the podcast, yes, but also, for the record, a white dude in the United States. Now, as you may recall from everything, the U.S. has a history of colonialism and enslavement. All of their contexts are part of that context. Of course, also him being someone who can talk to millions of people per month is part of the fucking context. And now we must acknowledge those different contexts. That is empathy. Also a popular rejoinder to someone taking offense is that it's just a joke. And as I said about Carr, it's not always possible to know that. Do I think Carr is a bigot? I don't know. Do I think Rogan's a bigot? Just about trans people, I guess. But here's the thing. You don't know. And nor do I. Either answer, yes or no, is not provable. This is not the offended party's fault. Instead, what happens, as I said before, is that the offended person cannot be sure if this is really a joke, because we're all privy to different contexts. We're a long way from humor, so let's get back to it.
Food, water, atmosphere.
One of my writing professors in college taught me that a good novel tells you how to read as it goes along. I'd add that this goes the same for stand-up. The words and the performance. There's also the context around the joke. The political environment, and the actor or performer, and as a member of the audience too. When I hear people defending a comedian's right to be offensive, they omit one key part. It's not funny to those people who were offended. The comedian failed. Oh, most people might laugh, but that's not enough. It has to be everyone.
Exact words to me.
Probably use your phone on a plane, I bet.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think you can now.
More frustratingly, it's the fans of the person who made the joke that wasn't funny. I can almost sympathize with a comedian or writer who fails to make someone laugh. But the fans? Fandoms ruin everything. There's like a certain contempt you hear in the phrase, oh, it's a joke. It's not offensive. It's like being told to smile more at work, wear more flair. Critchley said that such enforced fun is a form of compulsory happiness. It is tempting to see it as one further sign of the ways in which employees' private lives are being increasingly regulated by the interests of their employers. Except in this case, it's not the employers, it's not even the comedians, it's the fans. Being told a joke's not offensive and you should get over yourself and laugh is dehumanizing. It's like punching someone in the face and telling them it's a violent place out there. It's an effort to remove empathy and to homogenize the offended person with the fans. Look how much fun they're having after all. It's to be with them and not yourself anymore. So you can be rolled over and used and your value extracted however violently that is for Instagram likes and podcast ad buys. All this for a joke? Humor. It's a serious business. Comedy's changing. Sometimes people who make offensive jokes wonder if they're going to get quote-unquote canceled. Nobody cares about you. Or me. The whole vibe reminds me of a guy selling horses next to a car factory. I mean, really. Improvise, adapt, overcome. In this metaphor, the faux offensive comedian is the horse trader. The market for offensive humor seems to be focused along privilege, and it's plainly boring. Avocado toast and identify as attack helicopter jokes are less about humor and more about pretending that they're offensive for offense's sake. The comedian says the words and the audience acts as if the comic pissed off the libs, like some modern Wally George. But we're not pissed. We're not triggered. We're not even disappointed. We're just bored. That's not humor. That's boring. People aren't canceling comedians, but they just want something different. And now the comedian can hear people who aren't fans saying so. I could tweet at any of them right now. Offensive humor like that just sucks. Like, you probably think my comedy sucks, or this sucks, and that's fine. You're wrong, but that's fine.
It might surprise you that I still say superiority theory is a contender for the overall theory, but also is benign violation. That's been studied by academics, though just because things are benignly violating doesn't mean they're funny. See doorknob hanger holder, or whatever the fuck I said earlier. But relief theory is interesting, and not just an also ran. It's a common metaphor for human, not only by Gatsby even, but other comedians. These theories all have their pluses and minuses, and I'm not ignoring the other ones, but this video is long enough already. None of the theories match on the humor in a satisfactory way, and contradictory examples abound. And regardless, you cannot create a joke from these theories, or I can't. This is all a little wandery. I haven't written something like this in a long time, so I hope it's coherent. The last few sections have been about me talking about what's not funny and when my goal is to find out what is. Something, it seems, is that humor represents safety in a sea of danger, or away, or before, or even the punchline. Like, relief theory didn't go quite broad enough. We're safe now from the danger. We're away from the danger. We're not part of the endangered. Is that it? Just a way of being a voyeur? Merely being safe and watching? That's not funny. Or is it? Everything is funny, really, if you look at it from the right or the wrong place. So, finally, I guess, what is humor? It depends on the joke. Why are you booing me? I'm right. So, is everything funny? It depends. We've seen it. We saw it all from Gamergate to now. Everything is just a meme, just a joke, but memes and jokes lead to an alt-right insurgency and disinformation during a pandemic. So we're supposed to not be wondering what kind of fucking joke you're making? Because honestly, we're not buying it's just a joke anymore. It's like that guy you just met who is giving you too much shit for being mere acquaintances. Like, dude, I met you 20 minutes ago. I don't know if you're a psycho killer or just some dude that can't tell we just met 20 minutes ago. And really, that's the problem. We don't see the jokes as coming from anywhere but malice, really, because we are surrounded by malice. If you don't like people being offended, go after the ones who co-opt offensiveness to disguise their hate. Offensive jokes are funny to an audience member. It's not up to the comic to decide what jokes work. And it's not up to the other audiences. It's up to the listener. And in this world, there are billions of listeners. So how does colliding all these theories make writing a joke easier? Can one theory stretch to create jokes from Jackass Forever to a Confederacy of Nunches to the Three Stooges to a 4-minute moth joke? And I guess this is where I give my thesis. It can't. No theory of humor can. Any theory that cannot be falsified fails as a theory. You could put up examples and call them in and out just as a judge, not a scientist though. Jokes cannot be judged on a line of truth and false. Thank God. I know that's not the philosophical answer, but what I see is that the question is bad. We can't answer it. And to me, that's a brilliant joke.